everybody, sorry for the shaky start there with the audio. My name is Steve Durst. I'm the project lead on Drifters, and that's a little trailer that we're putting up online on YouTube and stuff, and you can check it out on there. I swear it'll have audio on the first track. So I want to get to a demo of the game here in just a second with some of my teammates, but first I'm going to give you a little info about the game, tell you what it's all about, and go into a little bit of the history about our development cycle, and then we'll jump straight into the demo. So our game is Drifters. It's a 2 to 4 player network multiplayer game developed by 5 students here. It's an action stealth sort of a game, so it's a deathmatch between players, and it centers around stealth and blending with the crowd and the environment. So it's for the PC. It was developed by 26 students over a 7-month development cycle, development period, and developed from the ground up in Gamebryo. So everything we see here is from 5 students. All the music, all the sound, animations, art, everything is all from 5 students here. So the name of the game, Drifters, is based on our playable characters in the game, these sinister demons that their main power is the ability to possess any host that they choose and then jump between the human hosts at will. So these 4 drifters right here are the most powerful around, and they've been summoned to do battle by the almighty Drifter Sovereign, who you'll see here. So these are our 4 characters. From left to right we have Luther, Sid, Gideon, and Lenora, and these are our primary drifter characters that you can play as in the game. Now, the Drifter Sovereign is summoning them to our fictional museum place here, which is the Brunswick Museum of History. And it's based off the Natural Museum of History in London. We got a lot of great reference photos when we were building this environment that we found online. It really helped us to flesh out the setting and the mood of the game. And as you can see, our version of the museum is a much darker one, much more sinister, so it really sets the tone for the game now. So it's really helpful in establishing the tone in this exterior of the museum, but it was even more helpful to look at reference photos for the interior of the museum. And we looked at reference photos all from the Museum of Natural History in London, and we used these to create our in-game environment and model the architecture and get texture samples from them. So you can see here's our version of the environment. This is our in-game environment for the game. And our exhibits on display here are devices of death, and you probably got that from some of the posters around here. So all of these exhibits that you see in the environment were supposedly used by the drifters in their past lives in hosts that they possess, and used in some way, shape, or form to torture or murder people in their past human forms that they possess. So this is our main gameplay space, and you'll get to see more of it in a little bit here in-game. But our museum wouldn't be in the museum without the crowd. Now, drifters need human hosts in order to move around and navigate. So the museum is full of human hosts that you can possess. There's a crowd of them in there, and you start out in the museum, and you and your opponents are thrust into a body of a human host, and then your job is to navigate around and see if you can spot other people in human bodies before they spot you. Now, in order to make your kill as a drifter and take down one of your opponents who you think you spotted in the crowd, you need to switch into drifter vision, which allows you to see through the eyes of your drifter player character and into the drifter realm. So this is where you take down other foes and where you can spot out other drifters in the environment. So the original concept that we had for this game came from the movie Fallen, starring Denzel Washington, which centered around a sinister demon that was able to jump from body to body and host to host. And that's where Anthony Demento, our lead designer here, really got a lot of his inspiration for the original mechanic of the game, which is jumping from host to host. And he also got a lot of inspiration from some of the stories Rick Hall, our production teacher, told us about his MMO experience, where people would actually try to dress up like NPC, non-player characters in the environment and blend in order to take advantage of other players in the environment in their disguise. So when Demento originally pitched this to the faculty, it was accepted. Then he and I worked together to form the initial framework for the game and pitch it to the cohort. So this video you're seeing right here is a video Demento and I put together with one of the animators here, Christian Mendoza, to pitch to the FIA cohort and show them our idea for the game. So you'll see we really needed something visual for this idea. We really needed something that showed clearly what we thought would be a cool game mechanic, jumping from body to body, because it's really kind of tricky to explain to people sometimes. So this was a presentation we put together and showed the cohort. There were 20 presentations, I believe, and 4 of them got elected to go on to pre-production, and ours was one of them. So when we went to the pre-production stage, the first thing we really had to figure out is, what do these drifters look like? What kind of beings are they? And so we knew that when they're in a host, we had to have some visual way of representing that drifter on that host. So initially we had some concepts where it showed a drifter silhouette around it, these glowing auras that would show a more sinister face around that of your human host. And so these are some of our initial concept ideas. And early on in pre-production, we worked to get this stuff in game as well and experiment with how the drifter would be displayed in game. Because it's a really tricky thing to show this thing that can jump from body to body, but still has an identity of its own. So that's something we really worked hard on accomplishing. And the producers and I also worked very hard on showing visual representations of this and how the drifters would interact with one another and their human hosts in the environment so that we could show that clearly to our pre-production team, which was initially a team of 11, and get them all on the same page together. So once we had that nailed down with the drifter characters, what we wanted them to look like and feel like and act like, we needed two things right off the bat. We needed a crowd of people and environment in-game, and we needed the ability to drift between those crowd members. So we really wanted to find out if this was a fun mechanic early on, if it really corresponded to gameplay and really helped out and it really felt fun. And immediately we got those people walking around the environment. It felt fun to drift from person to person, be anybody you choose. But we were lacking two things. That was the ability to network with each other right off the bat and between other players, and also a very intelligent crowd. And so there's a lot of skepticism at first about whether or not our game mechanic would really work. So before we even had networking or really complex AI systems, we worked on planning out with paper prototypes. Here you'll see we sketched out an outline of the museum, and little pennies representing members of the crowds, and then we work and mark underneath the pennies and play little games to see if we could spot out who was moving when and where amongst the producers and designers. We also used pre-existing games that allowed NPCs and humans to have very similar avatars so that we can prove to people that it is indeed possible to blend in with an NPC crowd, and it would be difficult to determine if someone is a human or an NPC if they're behaving correctly. Now, we also needed a really solid environment. First, what we were going for in the initial pre-production stages was we just needed a large open space that had a big crowd in it. So originally we were going to go with a subway. But what we found out is that we needed something with more depth, something that would tie in more directly to the drifters. So we ended up going with the museum environment. Here's some early stages of the museum in development here. You saw some of the more latest ones earlier. And then once we got the architecture planned out in the play area, decided upon, we really wanted to take it further and establish the tone of our game, a dark, moody, sort of sinister atmosphere. So these are very early picks as well, but it shows how we were working towards that eventual mood of the game. Now, two games, ours and Sultan's, were chosen to go on to production, and at that time we got 15 more teammates added to our team to make it a grand total of 26 people on our team. So we were able to do a lot more, a lot faster in that stage of the game. We needed art assets cranked out, we needed more crowd models, more environment assets, and we needed our programmers just cranking out code. So we sort of separated our own divisions and really worked hard on just grinding out those assets that we needed to get our game done. And we also worked a lot on getting our mocap data all in there. All the animations that you'll see in game were all directly from the Fire Motion Capture Studio, which a lot of you have probably seen over there. Had about 6 mocap shoots, and all of them were planned out for specific things like the movement of the crowd, the combat of the drifters, and other animations that you'll see in game. So we worked a lot on getting that done. And once we had those initial assets all done, everything that we needed to complete our game, we split into very specific strike teams of a few combined programmers, artists, producers, focus on specific projects. So we worked on integrating all our team members to focus on specific features of the game. As you can see here, here's our scrum board. What we did is we figured out what features were really important to us. Like we need drifters attacking each other, and we need combat to feel really fun and functional. So what we did is we developed a strike team and picked the best people that would work on that feature, and then pour all our efforts into them doing that. So you can see we developed specific task cards for that, and then moved them over incrementally when they're in progress and when they're ready to verify and when they're complete. So we really got a good visual representation of the progress